We're in Birchtown. This is Eastlink Magazine. Hi, I'm Katie Lonis, and today we're in Birchtown, which is just west of Shelburne, at the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre. In honor of African Heritage Month, on this special edition of Eastlink Magazine, we're going to feature stories about the culture and heritage of Nova Scotians of African descent. We're going to head inside, but first, here's what's coming up on this edition of Eastlink Magazine. On location in Shelburne with the Book of Negroes. We learn more about the history of African heritage in Pictou County. And I talk with Beverly Cox here at the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre. The theme of African Heritage Month 2015 is justice, people, places, and events. Africville is a living memory, a memory of a close-knit community, and a memory of being wrenched from that community. Voices Black Theatre Ensemble brought Africville stories to the stage earlier this month.
I think about the trains. The tracks went right through home, rib lines of steel laying like a huge metal tongue. And the ch-ch-ch-ch for midday or midnight run, its body all sleek and powerful and sure of itself. Every story was actually based on a truth. We, of course, took liberties with names to protect the innocent or the guilty, but every story was actually threaded through a real person or a real incident.
We were the Egyptian kings, at least that's what I decided to call ourselves after we gave up stealing chickens from backyard coops, setting the dump on fire, and fighting the trains that were coming by on the tracks.
I represent the youth of Africville. Yeah, that's it, the youth of Africville, yeah. Growing into adolescence and adolescence into the young adult, where the changes, how over that period of time, Africville was changed.
On weekends, me and Sister Jeannie would head down to Africville and stay with Grandma Queenie. She lived in a little red house around the turn, right near the shore, with a great view of the basin, all the way to town of Bedford on the other side. We listened to her stories.
There's times where I represent older women talking about how they're scared about losing what they had, and then there's times when I play a little girl who looks up to her grandmother making quilts and different things, and then I play a woman who is scared that her kids are going to be burning in the fire, in their house fire.
Uncle Penny. Uncle Penny turns the pages of the Herald, trying to find that article we spoke of. Now, what's the word? Expropriation mean? He said, his voice hardening with anger.
I play a variance of different characters, but I would say I'm playing the older generation of Africville. So I'm playing some of the older men and a very prolific character who was the last formal resident of Africville. So pieces with this kind of gravity and this kind of importance to me and to my background and where I come from, they don't come along every day, so you kind of got to grab them when they do.
You see, it was a matter of pride, not money for me.
I think it's really important because these are all real stories of what happened, and like nothing's made up, like all these things have actually happened. So I think it's really important to show that to people.
I think it's still resonating because people feel like they were hurt, especially because there's nothing at where Africville used to be, that big community. I think they feel like it was taken away from them, and and they believed that Africville was good.
I really felt the whole community today. I really felt a sense of Africville was not gone. It was like right here in this room with me.
And I will treat you well.
If you missed that performance, make sure you keep your eye out for dates coming up. In his novel, The Book of Negroes, Lawrence Hill tells the story of one African woman's struggle in post-revolutionary North America. Part of her journey brought her to Shelburne, and early last year, a production crew transformed the town back into an 18th century British outpost. Here's more.
In 2013, an Ontario production company announced that they would be coming to Nova Scotia to produce a 6-part miniseries based on the award-winning novel, The Book of Negroes. The story, by Canadian writer Lawrence Hill, follows the life of Amanita, an African girl kidnapped at the age of 11 and brought to North America as a slave. At one point in the story, Amanita finds herself in Shelburne, making it a no-brainer to shoot one part of the miniseries on location.
We're standing in Shelburne today filming, and the shot we're filming is when the Black Loyalists first arrived in Nova Scotia in 1783, and it was critically important for us to shoot right where it took place. That's part of the Book of Negroes novel, but it's also part of history. And so for us, the authenticity of actually being able to shoot where those Loyalist settlers arrived here, it's really important for us. It's a big part of Nova Scotia history and our culture. So we're thrilled to be able to shoot right here in Shelburne.
Prior to shooting, producers had no way of knowing what an impact the telling of this story would have.
Just seeing the whole thing come together, like just feeling like you're back in the 1700s, being in costume, the feeling of how people treated black people at that time, slaves. You're feeling all those emotions here on set. You know, I hope that everybody realizes what had happened truly happened, and what this book talks about is a part of my heritage, about who I am, my descendants and stuff. So to be a part of this movie series, The Book of Negroes, I'm honored. I feel privileged.
I think for people of African ancestry who are indigenous in Nova Scotia, you can reach those things and understand, yeah, we are very much a contributor to Nova Scotia, to Canada, and to North America itself. The story itself relates to the fact that we had a number of people of African ancestry who came from the United States. Many of these people of African ancestry had skill sets. They were the ones who actually brought to fruition the sail making, the craftsmanship, the shipbuilding, all those things, ship caulking, which is part of my family. And that's how we came to Nova Scotia. So that's where that history comes from. That's of interest to me, and that's why it's always been a fascinating piece, particularly when I see a book like this.
The Book of Negroes really is an interesting project, both culturally and historically. And the great thing about this is we'll get to show this story, which is a Nova Scotia story, all over the world. Black entertainment television is going to broadcast it in the U.S., and that's a huge market. They really reach into a lot of homes. So we think that people from really all over the world will get to learn about this amazing Nova Scotia story.
In Shelburne, I'm Rob Lepper for Eastlink Magazine.
I read the book when I was in high school, and I watched the miniseries on CBC, and I definitely recommend anyone who's thinking about reading it or watching it. It's amazing. It's time for a break. Coming up, I talk with Beverly Cox here at the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre.
Hi, I'm Tony Ince. I'm the Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage and African Nova Scotia Affairs. I would like all to have a wonderful African Heritage Month, and you're watching Eastlink TV.
We're back here at the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre in Birchtown, and now I'm joined by Beverly Cox, who is the site manager here at the center. Thanks for joining me today, Beverly.
And welcome.
Thank you. Tell me about the center.
Well, the center is obviously an interpretive center, so we're sharing with our visitors the narrative of the Black Loyalist journey. But also at the back of the house we have our administrative buildings and community spaces for our community.
And why is it important to have?
A few years ago it was identified in the heritage strategy for Nova Scotia that there were some gaps in the stories that were being told within the province of Nova Scotia. And the narrative of the Black Loyalists and the African Nova Scotians who reside in Nova Scotia, their narrative wasn't being told. So I think we're filling that gap.
So what kind of stuff can you do or see here at the center?
Somebody described this building as probably the most sexy building east of Montreal. So I don't know if we live up to that, but there's many things for people to do. Once you come into the center, we have a beautiful gift shop, which we will highlight African Nova Scotia crafts and local crafts and reading material and things like that. But once you enter the Lindsay Gallery, then there are many things to experience. We have a large multimedia component, plus we have an audio component, and then we have some tactile components. We also have a copy of the Carleton's Book of Negroes, which is the archival document that everybody is familiar with now, that people can leaf through. And then on the ends of that document will be search engines where people can type in names and start their genealogy research.
Speaking of the Book of Negroes, do you think the popularity of the mini-series that aired on CBC is going to affect the traffic that comes in here?
I think it will.
Yeah.
I think we'll see a difference in the people that will learn about their connections to Nova Scotia and the history that we have here. And I think they will make that effort to travel to Nova Scotia to explore.
Definitely. Yeah. What's the most interesting piece of history, of Black history, that you've ever heard or learned about?
I guess I would say that it's the connection between Nova Scotia and Sierra Leone. I've had folks come here who are consultants for different broadcasting networks and have told me the story that they've traveled to different parts of Sierra Leone and ended up in Freetown and talking about being Nova Scotian. They said, "You're Nova Scotian?" "Yes, I'm Nova Scotian." "Well, we have Nova Scotian connections." And they say, "Well, how's that?" You know, and come back to us and say, "I was so embarrassed. I was in Freetown and they're talking about their Nova Scotia connections, and I grew up here and went to school here in Nova Scotia, and I never learned that story." Yeah. So those are the kind of things that we find out from people, not only people who are in Ontario or Western provinces, but our local Nova Scotians that really don't know their history.
And hopefully they'll learn their history by being able to come here, right?
Yes.
Where can people find out more information about, you know, your hours and all of that kind of stuff?
We are beginning to go through the process of becoming the 28th museum of the Nova Scotia Museum system. So we're in the process of building a new website, but currently people can go to www.blackloyalist.com and everything is there that they need to know about us.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Beverly, and you have a beautiful place here and can't wait to come back.
Well, you'll be more than welcome.
Thank you. Pictou County has a rich history of African heritage, and two people in the area have spent a great deal of time researching this. Here's Tony DeCoste with more.
10, 11 years ago, I was contacted by the Africentric Heritage Park Committee, and they asked if I would design and research and interpret a panel, actually 3 of them. We did the research, and we had African homecoming for the unveiling, and Premier John Hamm was there, and some dignitaries, and it was quite a celebration. There was hundreds of individuals there to celebrate the history of their culture.
Part of John's role as researcher means reaching out to community members for stories that he can't find online or in books.
The information that I get from people like Cherry Paris, they have been so helpful in telling the story, the hands-on story about what life was like living in New Glasgow, and some of them are doing genealogical research to find the connections of the Giros of Tracadie and the Parises of Guysborough, and so it's neat to start putting this together, and hopefully the community will get interested on their roots.
Most of us came up from Guysborough County, because this is traced from the settlement when the Loyalists left Shelburne to come this way. Much of our history would be traced from that period. Now, some of the Loyalists that were there landed as free men, what they called them, free men, free people. Not entirely free, not ever entirely free if they were servants, and many remained servants. But when they reached Guysborough, people began, especially when they got property, not of their own, but if they landed in a place where they could see themselves grow a bit, away from the past. And so many of them remained in Guysborough area. Places like Sunnyvale and Tracadie and close communities close by. That's where they settled, and many of the family names are still there to this day.
I grew up in New Glasgow in the 60s and 70s. Things were starting to change, and I think the Black United Front and what was happening in the United States, there's individuals that don't back down, and they realize that, in order to go forward you've got to make a stand.
Another thing that has changed is the access to information on the subject of African history and migration.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of information online now. You would not believe, if you just punch in Nova Scotia Black Loyalists, how many sites you'll come up with to find the history of this, this immigration from the States.
Cherry has been studying her family tree for years, and although it isn't easy, it's something she's passionate about, and she's made a great deal of progress.
This is something that is a struggle, a work that is that's going to take a long time. But I have been going back pretty far, and that I can go back perhaps 8 to 10 generations. I cannot go back, I could not name them now, but what I'm saying is that my history of family heritage goes back to approximately 8 to 10 generations.
And generations from now, when others are looking back, they will no doubt find the name Cherry Paris. From New Glasgow, I'm Tony DeCoste for Eastlink Magazine.
If you'd like to learn more about the history, John Ashton and Cherry Paris will be giving a talk at the New Glasgow Library on February 26th at 6:30. Last week I was rug hooking, and this week I'm making a virtual quilt. While I do that, we're going to take a break. Coming up, we learn more about Viola Desmond.
Hi, my name is Lou Gannon, and I'm the president of the African Nova Scotia Music Association, and you are watching Eastlink TV.
We're back at the Black Loyalist Heritage Centre in Birchtown. When Viola Desmond's car broke down almost 70 years ago in New Glasgow, no one could have predicted that this would lead to a chain of events that eventually led to the end of racial segregation in Nova Scotia. And no one has worked harder than Viola's youngest sister, Wanda Robson, to keep her story alive. Here's Barb Anderson.
This day has been more than a year in the making, and it was this portrait done in separate blocks by students that helped make Nova Scotia's first Heritage Day, Viola Desmond Day. We asked her sister what Viola's message would be if she were here today.
She would say, wherever your strengths are, you go on that path. Because if she were here today, she'd say, it wasn't so in my day, and you've got it now. So take advantage of it, be what you want to be, but don't be mediocre in doing it, being over 100%. Growing up with Viola actually was another mother to me in a way, because she corrected my English, she corrected everything at my clothes I wore. It sounded like, so here she goes again. So you get the eye rolling when you're a teenager, and she's trying to tell you what's correct. But she did, without even saying, be respectful, be kind, and underlying the whole thing was education.
Before she became a successful businesswoman, Viola Desmond was a teacher with a special certificate that allowed her to teach in black schools only. She wasn't allowed to go to teachers' college. Segregation was a fact of life in those days.
Something had ignited a spark inside of me that cold, dark November night in New Glasgow, and it was spreading quickly. There had been no law against my ill treatment. Therefore, all that was done to me was justified. I was the one who stepped out of the line. Things had to change, starting with me, and they would.
She fought for what she believed was right, and it was right. And today it's unbelievable how today we can go to school, and she was a huge part of that.
I mean, Nova Scotia, look what you did to Viola and us. You robbed her of her dignity, dragged her away like villainy, and made her another page in history just because she wanted to sit and was doing so peacefully.
She strived for what she believed in, she really, and she meant it. One, she was not moving. She wanted to sit so and was moving peacefully. Two, she was a professional black woman cutting people's hair, making her own wigs. She was making products, bringing products around, making business for herself. She was very professional. And the key word of independent, she was independent.
Viola was the awakening of segregation, racial segregation in Nova Scotia, the awakening of the awareness of it.
Ms. Robson herself is a lifelong learner. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Cape Breton University at the age of 76.
Education is the groundwork, the keynote for succeeding no matter what color you are. And if you don't, my mother always said, if you don't have education, where are you going to go and what are you going to do? So these children are black and white and whatever, are being educated to the fact of human rights, the rights of human beings, and also the history of the struggle that came about, that is still going on, to be recognized as equal.
This day, this lesson, is one that Dartmouth High students won't soon forget. Viola Desmond is still teaching us. In Dartmouth, I'm Barb Anderson for Eastlink Magazine.
If you want to learn more about Viola Desmond, you can find the documentary Long Road to Justice, the Viola Desmond story, on Eastlink On Demand. Don't forget to watch Eastlink Magazine on channel 610, our HD channel, because everything looks brilliant in HD. Also, follow me on Twitter @EastlinkKatie. Remember, if you have any comments or story suggestions, we'd love to hear from you at 1-888-354-8439 or by email at eastlinkmagazine@eastlink.ca. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Eastlink Magazine. Remember, take time to learn more about African Nova Scotian heritage. You might be surprised at what you'll find. From all of us here at Eastlink Magazine, thanks for watching. I'm Katie Lonis, and I'll see you next week.